Chris, congratulations. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I mean, one win away from a historic night, what it could be for Crystal Palace. Just talk to me about what the game plan was today and what you feel was the real difference between the two sides.
No, definitely. I mean, we've had good results against Villa this season, so we didn't want to make the game bigger than what it was. We decided that we're going to play how we always have, and if we win, great. If we lose, we did it our way. So that was the biggest thing, was to not make the game bigger than what it was, which was just another game.
You say that very humbly, but you guys have had Villa in your back pocket for some times, and that is definitely a big thing to say this season. They've had a great season. They're a tough side to break down as well. What were some of the areas that you guys were looking to exploit today, and how you feel you did?
We were looking to exploit their high line. They're really good with the ball, but if we can nick the ball off them every once in a while, we figured that we'd play the ball in behind because we have some fast guys up front. So again, I think we executed our game plan pretty well, and I think that's why we won today.
And I mean, I just spoke to Leon Bailey from Aston Villa as well, and he said that one of the things that separated the two teams is that you guys definitely know what it's like to defend and hold that line for a long time, and that showed today. When it was you at the back soaking up all that pressure, what was the plan? What were you guys saying to each other as the minutes were ticking away?
Just 10 more minutes, and I think we said it, 10 times today, So again, I think we like to defend. I think that's something that a lot of teams don't like to do, but I think, we held our line. We tried to clear everything that came, and I think the shutout was deserved today.
So Crystal Palace, Chris Richards and company will now face Manchester United in the final May 17th. And joining this list of Americans who have played in the FA Cup final, the only one there, Tim Howard, winning it with Manchester United in 2004. The same hasn't been for Christian Pulisic, John Hart's, and Tim Howard, at least there with Everton. But with what we saw from Chris Richards, we know, Case, you were here all weekend for the FA Cup coverage. How would you rate his performance?
I thought it was really good, and I thought, obviously he has a great partner in Mark Gee. I can't pronounce his name right. The England international with him, and I think having somebody like him next to him, and then for a little while at the beginning of the season, he was kind of being put in defensive midfield, and again really took over that position. And I think when you listen to him and you watch Palace play, they understand they're going to have to kind of play a little more defensively. They've got pace and size up front, as you clearly saw from the highlights. And so they know they have to stay tight defensively and then hit on the counter. And so I think it's been a fantastic season for Richards to be able to truly establish himself in the Premier League.
Kirk?
I think it speaks for itself. Case mentioned his ability to play in the midfield. At first, when I saw that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, what's he doing in the midfield? But he actually performed very well in the midfield, and that speaks to the high IQ that he has. He's obviously an athletic figure. We saw it, in the beginning of last season, I think it was. There was a play where he chased down Anthony when they were playing against Manchester United. It became a viral clip. He's a physical center back. He has all the tools to be successful. It's good to see him thriving. He's had his moment in the sun at the club level, still waiting for it at the international level, I would say.
So would you put him as the best American defender available at this moment?
Defender, no, that's Anthony Robinson. But if we're talking about center back, he's 1A. Yeah.
And it's something I've had a lot of questions from fans and talking about, when is the U.S. going to find that center back pairing? Yeah. Clearly he has it now at Crystal Palace. And I think you ask most goalkeepers, most center backs, most kind of defensive back four, the teams that are really successful defensively, they have that cohesiveness between that back five. Start with the two pairings in the center and then go wide. And I think if the U.S. can figure that out, who is going to be that consistent center back pairing? They asked me, why have they not found that? Well, because you keep doing combinations and it doesn't work. The position finds itself.
In terms of trust, think about the center backs right now that you have in the pool. You've got Mark McKenzie, you've got Cameron Carter-Vickers, you have Tim Ream, you have Chris Richards. You could insert a Walker Zimmerman, if you will, who's in the last World Cup. Who screams confidence? Who screams at least right now on paper, because you got to play the game and you got to be healthy to play the game. And I think that's been a big issue of Chris Richards at the international game. Sometimes he's not been healthy. But it's really just Chris Richards for me. I don't feel overly confident at this stage in Tim Ream's career, where he plays left back right now at the club in Major League Soccer, for him to be realistically a guy that I feel comfortable with for the U.S. men's national team a year from now at the World Cup.
I like the two Celtic guys, right? But I think the difference, Trusty and Cameron. But I think he's just taken that step up. But the other thing, if you watch Celtic play, particularly in Champions League, and then you've watched Palace like the other day, they're not asking those guys to play like Beckenbauer out of the back.
Right.
Yeah.
They're defenders first.
Yeah.
So I think if you play some of those guys and then you bring them to the national team, just like we were talking about with Santi Jimenez, let them play to their strengths.
Yeah.
Don't ask them to be something they're not and then wonder why it doesn't work. Bring them in and say, be defenders. We have enough other guys that can Cruyff people in areas that we're not going to give up stupid goals.
So here's something interesting that Chris also said after the game. He was asked about the U.S. men's national team and why some are so solid and successful at the club level and it hasn't been seen at the national team level. He said, one of the reasons I think that everyone has been so successful at their clubs is you're in that environment every day, which goes back to what you just said. Don't try to invent something from them that they're not used to. And that's a big job for Mauricio Pochettino, too, if you want to build a successful roster that's going to work well together.
I'll give you, I was not a footballing goalkeeper. I was a shot stopper, coming for crosses, stuff like that. When I was a pro, my first year as a pro, was the old back pass rule. I can pick the ball up. Why would I have been passing it out of the back with my feet when I could just pick it up and throw it? So if you asked me to play like Allison or that's not my game.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say the same thing. Well, Herc, why don't you just play like Messi and then we'll be fine because you'll be Messi, you'll score 50 goals a season. I'll play like Allison because I'm going to give up 50 goals a season and we'll No, you can't ask somebody to be something that they're not.
Yeah.
Play to your players' strengths. Put the team to that's a coach's job.
That's unfortunately with this national team, even under Greg Berhalter, there were certain parts of Greg Berhalter and the play that he wanted to implement that just weren't very good for these players. They didn't feel comfortable in. The progressive style of that play wasn't a fit for these players. And now we see Mauricio Pochettino, and at times you see tactical wrinkles, like when Anthony Robinson plays. Sometimes he's high and wide on the left-hand side. Other times against other teams, he's down in the midfield as a defensive midfielder when they attack, and part of that build-up. And maybe you can do that because you have a player like Anthony Robinson. But we saw in the Final Four, we saw in the Nations League, when you don't have those high IQ players, who are you? And that's realistically where the national team is today. They had no identity.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a plan A or a plan B. It was just a bunch of players out there. And oftentimes, when you have a bunch of players out there, because you don't get to work day in and day out, you're going to get these type of results.
It'll be put to the test in the Gold Cup. Speaking of being put to the test, Crystal Palace will have the ultimate test. Granted, against this version of Manchester City, right?
If they played the Man City of a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe a different test.
But still, you see Man City on paper and you say, okay, this is Pep Guardiola's Manchester City case. Do Palace have the opportunity to upset or the chops to be able to upset
if you look at the way Man City plays, they're going to spread out, they're going to have a ton of possession, and they're going to take risks. Look at what Palace has. They got some strong defenders, and they've got some big, fast forwards. So they'll absorb some pressure, look for an errant pass, and then hit them hard on the break. And, I mean, I'm telling you, the other day, Man City, if the post was their best defender.
Yeah.
You know, there was 2 or 3 opportunities. Gardevaux had a bad situation that should have resulted in a goal. So I think if Palace cannot get picked apart, if Palace can kind of absorb some of that pressure, I see an opportunity. I still think Man City's going to win the match, but I see an opportunity.
It's the FA Cup. Last year has proved. I mean, last year Manchester United beat Man City in the FA Cup final, so that can't happen. You also have a team in Manchester City that is lacking for legs. They've got a bunch of players who aren't in their prime anymore, at least physically, and that shows when they don't have the ball. As Casey said, you know, Palace have the ability to run you into the ground. They've got, in transition, some very fast players, and Chris Richards mentioned it. You know, that was their game plan heading into the game against Villa. You could be pretty sure that's
Villa
very
aren't
similar.
Man City.
Right, correct. Right.
And we also saw some younger players in that semifinal for Man City. So I think maybe it's that recognition from Pep going, maybe we don't have the legs. So we can bring some guys in and maybe find some of those legs at this time of the season.
Well, it'll be an interesting 90 minutes or more in the FA Cup final. You can watch that on ESPN Plus. May 17th, it's official. Crystal Palace will face Manchester City.